Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to discuss the nature of logic, and the topic is logic is both a science and an art. So, nature of logic already we have studied. There are 4 points. So, out of 4 points, already we have discussed 2 points, and today we are going to discuss the third topics, that is logic is both an art and a science. So first of all, we will try to know what is science, or we will try to know what is an art. So first of all, what is science? So already we have studied in the previous lecture that a science is a systematic body of knowledge relating to a particular department of knowledge. For example, botany, zoology, it means botany deals with plants, zoology deals with animals. So these are the example of science. So here same, a science is a systematic body of knowledge relating to a particular department of nature. So scientific knowledge is methodical, that is general, rational, variable, verifiable, exact and accurate and certain also. So in defining the science or the definition of science, we have gathered that, or we have understand that scientific knowledge is methodical, general, verifiable, accurate, exact and certain. So this is science. And now what is an art? So an art is a body of practical rules. An art is a body of practical rules or techniques for the attainment of a certain end. So again, an art is a body of practical rules or techniques for the attainment of a certain end. It teaches us, that means an art teaches us how to apply knowledge into actual practice to realize some definite purpose. So an art teaches us how to apply knowledge into actual practice to realize some definite purpose. So here some differences between an art and a science. So here some points of differences. We will try to know the difference between an art and a science. So first point, science and art. The first point, there are some points here, the difference between an art and a science. So a science is concerned with the acquisition of knowledge. On the other hand, an art is concerned with practical skills to realize a definite or exact or definite purpose. So this is the number one difference. The second point between the difference between an art and a science is a science aims at knowledge for its own sake. Own sake. On the other hand, an art formulates rules. An art formulates rules or techniques to apply knowledge into actual practice, that is practical. Then third point, that is a science teaches us how to know, an art teaches us how to do. A science teaches us how to know. An art, on the other hand, an art teaches us how to do. That means a science teaches us to know and an art teaches us to do. And the number 4, that is the last point between an art and a science aims at discovering universal laws that govern particular facts. On the other hand, an art lays down some definite rules or techniques for the attainment of a definite purpose. Therefore, a science is theoretical and art is practical. Here one question arises, then science, we know that generally we know that the science is practical, but in logic or in the analysis of the differences, on the analysis of the definition of science and an art, we know that a science is theoretical while an art is practical. For example, physiology. So, do you have any idea regarding physiology? No. Physiology, that is physiology. Physiology, that means physio, that means physique, and logy means science, the science of physics. So here physiology, that means physiology gives us knowledge of the position, structure, function, etc. of the different parts of the body. Again I say, physiology gives us knowledge of the different parts, function, position of the different parts and different functions of the body. But surgery is an art. How? Here the knowledge obtained from physiology is applied in actual practice in order to cure the patients. When here surgery is an art, because the knowledge obtained from physiology is applied in actual practice in order to cure the patients. So here physiology is a science. So physiology is a science. It gives us to knowledge of the position, structure and functions of the different parts of the body. So here surgery is an art. So here the knowledge obtained from physiology is applied in actual practice in order to cure the patients. So physiology is an example of the difference between science and art. So now the question is whether logic is science only or art only. So let us see that the main headings of the nature of logic, and the third point of the nature of logic is concerned is both art and a science. So now how it is logic is both arts and science at the same time. So now question that whether logic is a science only or an art only or both. So the heading is the logic is both art and a science. So now what is logic? So now logic determines in a systematic manner the general principles of correct thinking. Thus logic gives us the knowledge of general principles of correct thinking. So logic is a science. But logic also teaches us how to apply the principles formulated by it in actual practice. So logic is an art also. So logic has a theoretical as well as practical also. Here we can say that means we are concluded that logic has a theoretical as well as practical, because logic determines in a systematic manner the general principles of correct thinking, as well as logic also teaches us how to apply the principles or techniques into for the realization of truth. So in this way, that is the analysis of these two definitions, for this reason we can say that logic has theoretical as well as a practical. So logic is a systematic study of the general principles of correct thinking with a view to applying them into actual practice for the attainment of truth. So logic is both a science and an art. However, a science and an art cannot be detached from each other. Knowing is ultimately, that is important so far as it helps doing. In fact, a science and an art are complementary to each other. A science is predominantly theoretical, but it refers to some practical, and again an art is predominantly practical, but it must be based on scientific knowledge. But an art is predominantly practical, but it must be based on some scientific knowledge. So logic consists of a body of scientific knowledge. So it teaches us how to know in what correct thinking consists, and how to think the correct ways or the correct thinking. That is, logic lays down certain rules or techniques for the attainment of truth. It teaches us how to attain truth by applying the body of scientific knowledge to practice. So in logic, we can have knowledge of the general principles of correct thinking. At the same time, we can attain truth and avoid error by the application of the rules in practice. So here we can say that in the analysis of this explanation, that we can say that a science and an art cannot be detached from each other, cannot be detached either. So both are the complementary to each other. That means and a science and an art both are complementary to each other. In logic, there are some logicians, and in general also, that logic is the science of sciences and an art of arts. So different logicians, that means logic has been described also the science of sciences as well as the art of arts. Here we see that every science, in order to attain systematic knowledge must conform to the general principles of correct thinking. So here logic deals with the general principles of correct thinking. The different sciences deal with different departments of topics, department of nature. So yet a knowledge of the general principles of correct thinking in general is indispensable to all of them. So there is a common basis of all sciences in which they are similar. The function of logic is to deal with this common basis of all sciences. So in other words, every science must have depend upon logic. So again, an art must be based on scientific knowledge. Already we have studied that an art must be based on scientific knowledge. So there is a close relation between a science and an art. So every science depends upon logic. So an art also indirectly depends upon logic. So again, various arts follow rules for the attainment of truth in their views of respective spheres. Yet they follow the rules for the attainment of truth in general, with which logic deals. So logic is the art of correct thinking. As such, it underlines and directs of all other arts. So in this analysis of in these explanations, or we can conclude that these topics, that is logic is both arts and science, finally we can say that the logic is both arts and a science. So one thing keep in mind, that the third point of the nature of logic is science. Logic is both arts and science. So how it is possible that first of all we know that what is science, and second what is art, and here there are three questions arises, that is what is science, what is an art, what is the difference between a science and an art, and how it is logic is concerned with both art and a science. So whether logic is a science only or art only, so or logic is both only. So here we can say that at last in conclusion we can say that logic is both art and a science. So thank you everyone.